think for that point, now the tricky thing about that is on the first one, you're kind of going conspiracy theory on it, and you need to be careful about that, okay, because the sketchy sources are going to win out. Male suicide, what angle sadly there are a lot of different angles you can take on that. What angle are you thinking of?
How it's higher than female suicide, and it never gets addressed.
That could be an interesting. So what you would I'm leaning toward that topic between the two you've talked about here.
Oh, okay.
Because
I was thinking about that too. I was wondering, because you said something about secondary or some sources, and I don't think those people talking about the moon landing would be good.
No, they would. Well, it depends. I mean, there's no real evidence to suggest that the moon landing was staged, but you could take it from the angle of how it operates as a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Hey, Jose. Hey, Melissa. How you guys doing? Okay. Can we get some videos on here? Okay, get some cameras on. So James, I think it'd probably be better to go with the male suicide, try and find out.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, it sounds good.
So I don't want to say let's put you down for male suicide, because that sounds like a threat.
No, but that is a topic. That is a topic. Yeah.
That's your topic, and so. Yeah. So what you want to think about is what's this particular aspect of it that you think is okay. Oh, okay, I understand, Melissa. Okay, so that means we can say whatever we want about Melissa. She cannot fight back.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I would go with that. Just find a specific aspect of it. For example, a specific reason. Are a lot of these coming from PTSD from war, or are they coming from other aspects, non-war related?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right, that sounds good.
Okay, Jose and Melissa. Okay, actually, Lama, I think we kind of settled your topic last week, didn't we?
Yes, I'm looking for like so many research. So try to one, I can rely like just one specific area. I don't want to talk so many direction. So I'm trying to make specific thing.
And that's a good instinct, because what you want to do is you want to be as specific as possible to lead in, because you probably already noticed that your research is going to pull you in a lot of different directions.
Already I start like writing thing. Already I start writing. I'm like, oh no, so many direction. I need to focus on one.
So my suggestion is you want to narrow it to start with, and then be a little bit open to the reality that a lot of different sources have different agendas and different focuses and different aspects of it, and they're going to pull you in a lot of different directions, and that's not wrong. That's just the nature of research. Okay. A little bit later, I'm going to talk about. A little bit later in the semester, I'm going to talk about how you have essentially in your research you have overlaps. In fact, let's go ahead and do that a little bit now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the whiteboard, which I haven't talked about yet. Okay, so when you are doing research, you have this circle of what you're talking about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the sample of what of my sample research paper, which you guys haven't seen yet, but the research proposal is for that. So my topic is lying in the Harry Potter series. Okay. So that's my topic. That's my goal to talk about that. So of course I look for sources on lying in the Harry Potter series, and would you be surprised to find out I didn't find many sources on lying in the Harry Potter series? You shouldn't be surprised. There weren't. There was one now. I wrote it. Okay, but there are all these different sources. So what do I look for? Well, I look for overlaps. So overlaps. Ethics, anything on morals. Okay, in Harry Potter. So what you want to recognize is this what I'm drawing here is called a Venn diagram, and what it is it's a diagram that talks about overlaps between sources and between different things. And in your research, you're looking for the overlaps. You're looking for the places that what you're talking about it relates to something somebody else is talking about. Okay.
Mm.
So morals in Harry Potter. I'm looking for that. Okay. I looked up their article. Well, let's not do that one. Okay. That's what happened. I got the wrong circle. Okay. I wanted something on Christianity in Harry Potter series.
Mm.
Nope. Suddenly I was typing in Serbian. Okay. So, and I went like this. So one of the things I'm going to suggest you do is on your topics, even now at this stage, you want to think about not only what is your specific topic, but what are topics that other writers write about that overlap with yours. Okay, that's where you find out. And as Lama said, that will also extend you a little bit. That will tug your topic in little directions you didn't anticipate, but that's normal for research.
Okay.
Research almost always ends in places we didn't expect, because research is finding out new things. New things take us in new places, and new places take us into other new places. That's just the nature of research. Okay, so don't be alarmed when your research paper starts to drift on you. You want to make sure it doesn't have mission creep that goes in so far in a direction that's no longer the same topic, but you do want to acknowledge that new knowledge brings new ideas. Okay, you are going to end up with different ideas about this at the end that they had at the beginning. That's just normal.
Okay.
Okay. Be also open to the possibility that as you find out new things, that shows you up new things to research. Okay, that will happen. Okay. Right now, your goal for this. Now, remember, we're in week 3 now. On week 6, you have a proposal to turn in. And that's essentially about a 10-sentence paragraph on what your topic is, what you think about it, and what sources you think you're going to use. And you only need to list 2 or 3 sources. Now, once you've listed those 2 or 3 sources, you are not committed to using those in the paper. Okay, you're not committed to using them. Okay, if you do, great. If you don't, that just means your paper took a different direction.
Okay.
Okay. So, as much as I'm trying to reassure you at this point, you're probably not feeling terribly reassured, right? Because you to use a technical term, you got a big ass paper to write. Okay, I hate to use technical jargon, but you got a big ass paper to write, and it's probably not feeling very comforting right now, right?
Yeah.
Yes, not.
Okay, we're going to go through this step by step. Okay, we're
Okay.
going to go through this step by step. Right now, your most important thing is to pick a topic and start looking for it. I believe last week I went over the places to look. I believe I went over the library databases, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So look at those library databases, and then when you're done with the resources of the library, first the catalog to find books, ebooks, and then the database to find articles. Then when you go to the net, do a Google advanced search. Okay, and I don't want to talk about that right now, but I want you to think about that. And in short, the Google advanced search, you go through the settings and ask for advanced search.
Yeah.
And that's a way of doing it. Okay. Okay, any questions about any of that?
No.
Melissa asked, we are allowed to choose topics, anything negative going on? Yes, or actually even positive too. It doesn't have to be necessarily all negative. We just kind of focus on things. I got to admit that right now we're all in a problem where there's one particular negative thing that is just sucking the life out of everything. Russia's attack on Ukraine. And it's just hard in some ways to think about much of anything else. But that doesn't mean you have to write about it. You can write about anything, okay, that's going on. Okay, understanding the worry that is involved in this for the world and for the poor people of the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So, any questions about now, Melissa? Do you have any particular topic that you're thinking of? Melissa has to go through chat. Okay. Okay. So anything, okay, anything essentially that deals with human behavior. I focus on bad because that's a lot of what comes through from arrow thieves, but it doesn't have to necessarily be bad. It can be something something that is just human kindness. Okay. The Holocaust. Yes, thinking about the Holocaust to the government system. Now, when talk about the Holocaust to government systems, I'm not sure what you mean. Do you mean the Holocaust during World War II and the Nazi government involvement in that? Okay, so what you would want to do is you want to pick a specific aspect of the Holocaust, because believe it or not, this 8 to 10 page paper is a tiny paper. A tiny paper. Okay. Now, James, I want to see your face express what you're feeling when I say the 8 to 10 page paper is a tiny paper.
Oh, it's not that bad, because when I started, no, when I started the first essay, I got like 3 pages easy, and then
that's good.
Yeah, then I had to switch it because some of it didn't make sense. But
well, that's good. That's good. That's good. So, Lama, give me a good scared face for that. Okay, so
I'm scared.
I'm scared.
For me, writing is not easy. So
okay. Well, James said he's an ace on this. James said nothing. He doesn't want to do anything but writing from now on, right?
No.
no.
Did I misquote you?
A little bit. A little bit. Just the end part.
The end part. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but don't worry. Okay, we have basically you're gonna have about a 10-week period in which to write the essay, and in which to get the information and write it. But frankly, James and Lama, you guys have your topics. Okay, Melissa, you just need to narrow it down to something a little bit more precise. Some aspect of the Holocaust, because believe it or not, 8 to 10 pages is a tiny essay. And the basic rule of thumb is the smaller your essay is, the tighter the focus needs to be. Okay, the main difference between an 8 to 10 page essay and a 100-page essay is a 100-page essay is about more things. You have more room to write about them, but basically you're going to do the same method. And if everything works the way I wanted to at the end of the semester, you guys are all prepared for the writing you're going to have to do in college. Okay.
Oh, okay. Cool.
This is the goal of this.
Nice.
Okay, so Melissa, you just need to narrow down your topic to a specific aspect of the Holocaust. For example, the role that women played in it, or the role that guards played in it. Josef Mengele, the Angel of Death in Auschwitz, is a popular topic because he's a horrific person who did experiments of ghastly natures. For example, freezing people to see how long it would take them to die. In fact, after World War II, when we freed the camps, the medical community had a dilemma, because they had all these horrific experiments that the Germans and the Japanese had also done. And in any conditions, they have to think of, well, what do we do with this research? We have the records of what they did. We know, for example, how the difference between how a redheaded twin freezes and one doesn't. Okay, what do we do with this research? And in the end, they decided they had to kind of use the research because it's horrific that somebody did it, but it's a double dishonor to the people who are killed if we learn nothing from their horror. And then we just hope nobody ever tries to be a Josef Mengele again. Okay. Okay. So Melissa, just think about something more precise. And again, you guys who've got your topics, I say we're going to formalize this on week 6, but you start doing the research right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions about the research paper?
No.
So what I want to do now is I want to go over basically this week and what we're working on this week. And so remember, you want to kind of focus your attentions around the module and the week, and it goes by the module week. Now at the beginning, just as last week, at the top of it, I have the basic week 3 tasks. Okay, the week 3 tasks. So what you're going to do this week is you're going to build upon the win-write summary. Now I have some notes on the win-write summary, things that need to be improved and things that need to be worked on this. Okay, but you build on that for next week. Now this week there is no one big assignment that's going to be due. Okay, but next week you're preparing for the essay that's the first 100-point essay that's going to be the argumentation essay. It's going to include both win-write and health guide. Now for those two, where do you find them? The win right was in last week's module, week 2 module. Okay, you got that. Okay, and the health got lecture, health is in this week. So this one we don't have on a printout. We just have the we have the link here. Okay. Now, also want you to notice something from okay. Actually, any questions about that?
No,
Okay.
we can download the link, right? After we get to the link, we can still download it, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And I had a scare yesterday when I looked at the link in one class, and it told me I needed to subscribe to the Seattle Times. That doesn't appear to be there anymore. So my suggestion is get this, and if you can, print it out so that you have it, so that you don't have to
Before it's
subscribe to
gone.
Seattle. What?
Okay, before it's gone, I know.
Before it's gone, before you are a subscriber to the Seattle Times. Perfectly wonderful publication, but I don't think you need to subscribe to it, right? Okay. So I'm trying something new this. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
So the argument on both
Yes.
article. Okay.
Yeah. So for this, to help you on this, I've got some things to work on this. Okay. So first of all, we have this link. Then we have the Health God lecture. That is me talking about the Health God essay.
Yeah.
So when you go, okay, if you want to go over in detail what her argument is and how it develops, that has that lecture. I hope to do a little bit of that today, but if we don't get a chance to fully do it, you have the video to help you here. Also, we have the argument essay packet page, and I put some notes on this. So what I've got here is I've got another lecture. You guys are going to get sick of seeing me on video.
No, we're good. We're
Okay.
learning. So we're good.
It's
Do you need to put
yeah.
the code the same what you said in the video?
Oh, for the Zooms, yeah, we can't rewatch the Zooms.
Are the Zooms getting cut off for you?
No, we can't rewatch them. They say put the code in, and when we put the code in, it doesn't work.
Okay, that's not good. Okay, I'm gonna have to figure out why that's happening, because you should be able to watch them. Another thing I'm kind of doing is I'm trying to link them from a YouTube channel, and that may work better.
Yeah.
Okay, it seems to me I don't understand why you need a passcode to watch those, and why the passcode you put in doesn't work.
I don't know.
Okay, that doesn't seem good. Well, thanks for letting me know. I'm gonna have to go fix that. Okay, I have to go beat up Mr. Zoom or something like that. I don't know what has to happen. Okay, so I'll fix that. Now this one shouldn't be a problem, because this is just embedded in this, so you should be able to look that, watch the videos. Okay, and you get to observe my bad hair day, and so okay, which is every day. So this packet here is contained in this too. So what I'm doing in this one is I'm going over the packet. All the information that's in the packet is here. Okay. Now, at the same time, you may want to take a look at the packet, because the packet has it as a Word attachment. Okay. And what I've done in general with the packet, okay, let's bring this up. So as it said, look at the video first. Okay. This is in Word format as a file. And what I've done is I've broken the argumentation essay into steps that are going to be important for you to follow on it. Okay. Now, we have the same basic format that we talked about earlier in the semester, but you're adapting it here to the purpose that you're going to have, which is going to compare two essays and their arguments on it, and come to your conclusion about what should be done about the defund movement. Okay. Now, your responses to this can range anywhere from I disagree with any sort of defund, which is fine, okay, or we should defund the police altogether. Most often, most of you are probably going to come somewhere in the middle, where you suggest there are some reforms the police need to do, and Winwright and Helfgott may have good ideas about them, right? You are not committed to agreeing with either of them or all of them. You're just committed to summarizing what they say and how to do about it. Now, the introduction is going to be a little bit different. Well, it'll be a lot different from the Winwrite, because in the Winwrite, you only had to talk about one essay. Here you have to set up two. And I'm going to suggest doing it in two. Do we have the introduction in two paragraphs? The first paragraph is just a general overview of the to fund issue. So for this, you don't need to worry about Winwrite or Helfgott in particular. You're just saying, what is the defund movement? How did it come about? Okay, what are the issues involved in it? So it'd be a good paragraph, 5 to 7 sentences, okay, in which you talk about that. In the second paragraph, then you mention both people's names. Okay.
Oh.
Then in the body, what you're going to do is you're going to pick one of the essays and go over it first. Now, if you do Winwrite, that's fine. If you do Helfgott, what I'm going to suggest is what you've done for Winwrite, if you've done it correctly, okay, should be kind of your model for what you do with Helfgott. It's a 5 to 6 page essay, which means you're going to spend about a page and a half on Winwrite and about a page and a half on Helfgott, or the other way around. Okay, it doesn't matter which you do first, just as long as you spend about a page and a half on each of them. Okay, so at that point, it's kind of like the Winwrite essay, and then you do the same thing for Helfgott as you did for Winwrite. Okay, so in the body, it's going to be that, and then the conclusion. Okay, one of the things I want you to consider as your basic starting point for a conclusion, any conclusion, is a basic understanding of what a conclusion does is it looks back at everything you've talked about in the essay. It reminds us of things that you want us to think about in the essay, in particular examples, and then it leaves us with a final idea. Okay. So just as with the Winwrite, I don't want to hear your opinion until after you've summarized their opinions. Okay. Just as with the Winwrite, the core of what you're doing is summarizing their essays. Okay.
Yeah.
The thing that's going to be massively different in the body, in the conclusion here, is that you are going to you're not only going to talk about what Winwrite, but you're going to talk about what Helfgott says. You're going to come to a conclusion on your own about what's important. Now, the key I want to mention here is the tricky thing when you go into your opinion is you do so without saying I think or in my opinion. You do so without mentioning yourself. And for many people, that's the hardest part. When they go into express their opinion, they want to say I think or I believe. So what I want to suggest to you, okay, is a basic note you want to have on this here. Okay. Any opinion you don't attach to somebody else is yours.
Okay.
Ah. I should be able to type here. Okay. So an example I'll often use, okay, so if I say, okay, what's the difference here?
Mm.
I'm going to give you two and say, which one of these makes you angry? Okay. In my opinion, you're an idiot or you're an idiot.
The first one.
But in the second one, whose opinion is it?
It's the person's. It's coming directly out of their mouth.
So are you saying it's no difference in terms of who you're going to punch between these?
No, it's different.
Yeah, but it's still in my opinion, you're an idiot and if I say you're an idiot, James says that's the person saying it.
Yes.
Yes.
So simply by the fact that I say you're an idiot, okay, which I want to be clear, you are not, okay, but if I say you're an idiot, okay, you don't need in my opinion, you don't need I think
Right.
to blame me for the opinion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is you want to understand is that throughout most of the essay, this one, you're summarizing Winwrite's argument, you're summarizing Helfgott's argument, and then when you shift at the end in your conclusion and start talking in your own voice, you do not need to say I think for it to be your opinion. Okay. That's just assumed by the fact that you're stating it. Okay.
So how will we reference that? Like we agree or our views are the same? I mean,
okay. So let's say here, okay. So let's say you, now again, in the sample, I have a shift to that. I have a fuller detail on that. And remember, I've got a full video that goes over the argumentation packet. So you can go back and check that over and over. And I don't think you have to have a passcode for that, okay, okay, but you have that. But what I want to suggest is the shift is, okay.
Like we say our opinion, but like just in a sentence.
Okay, so let's say you have this. Let's say this is toward the end of the essay. Okay, you've already summarized Helfgott, you've already summarized Wainwright, or in the other way open. You say the truth is, okay, or actually,
or maybe, okay.
Both writers make valid points. Okay. Now, the moment I've said that, whose opinion is it?
It's yours.
It's mine. So notice I didn't have to say in my opinion. I didn't have to say I think. The fact that I'm making a point about the people we've written about, and that I'm just making it, and I'm not attaching it to either of them, indicates it's my opinion.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do. Okay. All you need to do to specify something as your opinion when you're talking about very different sources is to say something without quoting somebody or attaching it to them.
Okay.
So, for example, if I say Helfgott thinks this, and then clearly I'm about to summarize her, right?
Yeah.
If I say Wainwright argues, I'm summarizing him, right?
Right.
Okay. But in this case, it's clearly going to be my point. So if we go back to the argumentation handout. Okay, now notice what I want to be clear. What I've done here is I've got a sample that what I've done for the issue of the death penalty. I've got 2 essays they're writing on either side of the death penalty. And then I've gone through the essay. Now, what I've done is instead of writing a whole sample essay, I've just taken some of the major moves that have to take place in an essay of this sort. And then the last of those is the argument, the conclusion. So I want you to look at this conclusion. Evans and Surratt have illustrated some of the vital issues in capital punishment. Whose opinion is that? Evans and Surratt have illustrated some of the vital issues in capital punishment. Whose opinion is that?
The writer.
That's mine. That's mine. Okay, so I'm going to explain what those issues are. I'm going to point out major things that each of these writers says. Okay, but this is my opinion. So what I want to suggest is we hear your voice at the beginning of the essay. We hear your voice at the end of the essay. Between that, it's mostly summarizing what they say, and your voice comes in at the end of the summaries to kind of suggest what you think about them. So let's take a look at this conclusion. Evans and Surratt have illustrated some of the vital issues in capital punishment. It is final. There's no going back once we have executed a person. So Evans is right that it should be something we do only in the most extreme cases. Surratt has a point that the methods we use do not change the horror of killing another human being, no matter how monstrous that person's actions have been. We naturally recoil from what Evans sees as justice and Surratt views as one of the most unjust institutions in our nation's history. In the end, we cannot shirk our responsibilities to the human race, which is lessened each time a human commits the acts of a monster. We cannot salvage anything from the loss of a human life by treating serial murder or other irredeemable acts as crimes like kidnapping, but with longer sentences. The punishment must balance the crime, and only a life will balance the depraved taking of a life. We must use capital punishment sparingly, but we cannot have genuine justice without it. So at what point do you hear my opinion? That's it. Okay, but notice throughout this, what I'm doing with this conclusion is I'm looking back at major points Evans makes, major points Surratt makes, and I'm reminding you of the things that are important about this. But in the end, I'm beyond them. I'm taking my ideas and taking it a step further. And that's what any sort of conclusion does, is it takes a look at what has happened before and moves into what we're going to go here. Okay. Lama, looks like you're walking right outside my building.
I think so.
Okay, you're outside the ATC, right?
Yeah.
If you pop in here in room 140, I'm sitting there.
Okay.
Okay, so any questions about that conclusion?
No.
So again, when you're expressing your opinion, all you need to do is express an opinion. If you don't quote somebody, if you don't cite somebody on it, it's your opinion. It's that simple. Okay. Now we're going to look at the introduction. and be on the lookout for the possibility of an introduction assignment this week or sometime next week. Because usually what I'm going to do is I'm going to have an assignment in which you do the introduction, and then you're going to do it. So remember, and then we work with that. Okay.
All right.
So the stages are the body, and I've broken this into this. Now, again, I've filmed a video that goes over this in more detail. Okay. But what I want to look at first is the introduction, because that's going to be the first thing. Okay. And what I want you to notice here is when I'm talking, in the opening paragraph, I don't mention Evans or Surratt directly. Okay. I don't have to in the introduction. My introduction is only there to suggest what the issue in capital punishment is. Now, even though I'm not mentioning them directly, I've still got an eye about what they're going to talk about. That's still going to be something that's going to be on my mind. Okay. So let's take a look at this. The debate over capital punishment has caused controversy in the United States for decades. Social conservatives have argued that extreme crimes require extreme consequences. Now, you've always seen my conclusion, so you see this kind of overlaps with what I'm going to say in the conclusion, doesn't it?
Yes.
They contend that if the price of taking a life is the loss of one's own life, that will deter people from committing a murder. The strength and certainty of punishment would make crime less common than it is today. Social liberals see capital punishment itself as a crime. They argue it is good. Okay, it is enforced arbitrarily, much more often used against people of color and those without access to good legal representation. Both sides argue that over the innate cruelty of the death penalty, its logistical difficulties, and even the methods of execution. It is difficult and emotional issue that intersects with many fault lines in the United States today. So again, I haven't mentioned either of the sources yet. I know what I'm going to think about them, or at least in general what I'm going to think about them. And I'm touching on some things that are going to overlap with them, but I'm not committed to either of those yet, right? So one thing okay, let's talk about things that are definitely going to come up in this, okay? I am going to talk about social conservatives. I am going to talk about social liberals, okay?
Are we in the same mark?
Okay.
It's right there.
Okay.
I know you sense from this introduction that I'm also going to talk about this idea.
Mm-hmm.
Later in the essay, you're not surprised when this comes up because I mentioned it in general later. Okay, you're not going to be surprised if I talk about deterrence, because both of these writers talk about the question of deterrence, which is the concept of punishment keeps people from doing things because they see the consequences of doing those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be surprised if I talk about this. In fact, most of the basic things, okay, such as innate cruelty, okay. So notice here, I haven't mentioned either of them, but everything I've highlighted in yellow is something that's going to come up in there. Now, the next part we did, this is the second paragraph of it. So in the second paragraph of the essay, that's when I'm going to start talking about Evans and Surratt. And notice the first time I mentioned a source, I mentioned the full name of the writer. That's a move I want you to kind of get as a go-to. You mention the full name of the writer. After that, you just use the last name. Don't use the full name don't use the first name of the writer. You don't know these people, and even if you do, you don't do that in an essay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You also don't need to do what Wainwright does, where he uses Ms. Rice. Okay, he's doing a publication that kind of has an old-timey faction on that. You just use the last names. Okay. So right off the bat in this second paragraph, I'm going to mention the two people. Okay, so we know these are going to be. Now this paragraph is about what are the basic big issues that they talk about. So any introduction you use, regardless of the topic, regardless of the field, introductions tend to be general. They may mention example, but they use the example to get into the thing in general. And the reason that, okay, I want to go over this. The reason that introductions tend to be general is because you're introducing people to a topic that they don't necessarily know fully about, or at least they don't know fully what you're going to say about it. You have to ease people into that. You ease them into it by giving the big picture, and then in the body, you're going to go into specific things, right? Okay. Any questions about that? That is one of the basic, okay, that's one of the basic rules of thumb I want you to think about as you go through it, right? Surratt questions whether there is any way it can be done fairly or humanely. The reality of killing a human being is never fully separates it from the motives of violence and revenge. Okay. So notice here, I'm going to come back and talk about Surratt's point on this later on, but here I'm just mentioning it in general. I'm noticed in the first two paragraphs of the introduction, I don't quote. Okay, some of you in your Wainwright summary were way too eager to quote. You don't have
Yeah,
to
I
quote
did.
in the first paragraph. I understand that, okay, because I'm going to talk about quoting, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
I see the video.
you don't have to quote in the introduction. If you do, that's fine, but it'd be a short quote. And if you quote something in the introduction, it's going to be something that's pretty central to what you're going to talk about, that you're going to come back to time and time again. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
But okay to quote in the body, right? Just
I'll
not
run that
in
by
the
me again.
introduction. And not in the introduction. It's okay to quote in the body, you mean?
Yes. Oh, that's
Okay.
where you do most of your quoting.
Okay.
Okay. So if you do quote anything in the introduction, it will be a short quote.
Okay.
Okay. I myself don't always do in the samples I give you exactly what I suggest you do, partly because I wrote some of these samples before I gave the template. And what I'm trying to do with this template is kind of give you guys an easy all-purpose structure for what an essay works like, so that you can adapt that as you go into more complex issues, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. But you'll notice that writers use different templates. Okay. And you notice I use different templates in my own essays. Okay. So for example, what I very often like to do in my essays is I like to start with what we call a provocative quote, one that provokes you to think about things. Okay. And then I go into this, but after that, if that quote, I go into the general thing. So I want you to go to the general at the beginning, right? So here I'm going
sorry,
to
I have to go.
Sorry, see you,
have to-
Lama. Okay, good
Thank
luck.
you. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
The reality of killing another human being never fully separates it from the motives of killing, of violence and revenge. Since capital punishment is inherently cruel and unusual, it cannot be justified and must be ended. Evans admits that many of the challenges faced, Evans admits many of the challenges faced, but contends that they can be met within the legal system by limiting the number of crimes eligible for it and raising the standard for conviction. Those who argue against it do not fully appreciate the depth of sentiment in favor of it and oppose no alternative that could solve the problems murder presents. So notice here, I'm being very balanced. You should have no idea whether I agree with one or the other. You shouldn't have an idea of that until I'm done with the essays and go into the conclusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I spent about three sentences on one, 3 sentences on the other, and I'm just giving the general overview of what each of these writers thinks. Okay. Now, in the body, I don't want to go through this whole handout because I've got a video in which I do that. Okay, but I want you to notice some things about this. And the first thing I want to notice about this is when I go into the body, I'm going to start with one of the essays. Okay, now notice when I refer to the essay, I don't give Kim Evans' full name because I've already given that.
Mm-hmm.
Once I've mentioned that writer's full name, I don't necessarily need to use the full name again. I can just use the last name. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to go into these ideas. Evans argues that the use of the death penalty should be, quote, measured and commensurate, end quote. Now the next thing I want you to notice is documentation. We haven't talked about this yet, but I'm planning on bringing out, I'm letting a video drop this week about it. But what the internal documentation is to send the reader to the works cited list. Okay, we know this is Janet Evans because we have that in the works cited list. And what that documentation there that tells you, it's on paragraph 3 of that. Now, the fact that I don't have a page number indicates that this is not one that has page numbers. This is an online source that doesn't have page numbers. So if it's short, okay, let's say hypothetically about 10 paragraphs, I think it's fair to be able to count up to 10 paragraphs. It's not fair to expect somebody to count 20, 30 paragraphs. So let's say if the essay is about 10 paragraphs long, number the paragraphs, paragraph 3. I can find that. And notice I've documented all these. Another thing I want you to notice is as I go further into the essay, I go further into our article, which means the paragraph numbers go up. So one of the things you should feel that you're doing in your essay is you're basically moving through the articles in the order that the article mentions examples, right? So let's take a look at this. Evans argues that use of the death penalty should be measured and commensurate, paragraph 3. We should limit the number of crimes we use it for to the most heinous crimes, such as the especially depraved murders. This would fulfill the will of the American people, who are the direct and indirect victims of horrible crimes and have a stake in how to defend them. Now, this, here's a quote. This limited application strikes a balance between the demands of society for just punishment and for the perpetrators of the most serious offenses with the respect for the sanctity of human life. Again, still paragraph 3. As frightening as putting a person to death is, sorry, let Jose in. As frightening as putting a person to death may be, the people of the United States have consistently supported it as the only, quote, just punishment, paragraph 4, for crimes that break the most basic connections of human existence. This contrast between the things that make life valuable and the actions show absolutely no value in that life provides a place where the ultimate price must be paid. Okay. So notice here, I'm moving through Evans's essay, and I'm basically moving through it in the example they talk about. So with any essay you're going to talk about, okay, the first step is, what is the writer's big argument? That's your first step. The first move I should, as a reader, not as a person with a great book, but as a reader, the first step with any source you mention, the first step I should see is that you're telling me what's important for that to look at in that essay. Okay. The moment you mention a person's name, you said that this is important, and you're going to show what's important about it, right to that point. Now, in the case of the in the argumentation essay, you're going to go over each of these in more detail. Later on, you're going to do sometimes where what's important about the essay for you in your research paper may not be the whole argument, but maybe a part of the argument. That little overlap in the Venn diagram I pointed out earlier. But the move is still going to be the same. Here's the source. Here's what's important about it. Okay. Excuse me. So excuse me, I forgot to share screen to go back to it. Okay. Although, actually, are there any questions you have about this argumentation handout?
No.
So again, I have a video on that. You go through the handout, you take a look at it. What I want to stress in general is the introduction just talks about it in general. Okay. The first two paragraphs, the first paragraph talks about the issue in general. The second paragraph talks about the two essays in general. Okay. In the body, you're going to spend about 1.5 pages on Wainwright, and then 1.5 pages on Helfgott, or the other way around. Either way, you're going to spend the same amount of time. Then you're going to switch to the conclusion, and the conclusion is going to be where you express your opinion. Okay. Any questions about that?
No.
Okay. So what I wanted to look at here is have the notes. Okay, and I want to double check this because I believe I put up a video on this, because I've gone nuts on videos. Okay. Okay, so this is a page. And notice I've got a video on this that goes over these in more detail. You can look at that in your own time. What I do want to stress about this is that some basic points that are going to be important. Right off the bat, you want to give a title to your essay. Okay, and the title should not be Wainwright Summary. It should not be Argumentation Essay. If you can, what I suggest you do is you put what I call a dummy title, which is one that just occupies that space until you think of something better. And the defund movement, pros and cons, could be a perfectly fine title. Not exciting, but it tells us what the topic is. Okay, use that title. The introduction should be general. There's no need to quote just yet. Okay, talked about that earlier. Use the statement quote analysis pattern. Now, this is something I'm going to put out a different video on, hopefully tomorrow. But what I'm going to stress on that is every quote leads into it with something to talk about. And in order to talk about that, I want to give you a sample. Okay. So in the argumentation essay, we'll look at where it. Okay, so I wanted you to look at this here. So these are stages we have here. Okay. This is my lead-in. This is me talking, and what I'm doing is I'm setting up what to look for in the quote. Okay. Then I have the quote. I'll highlight that in green. Okay, in green. Okay, and then I have the analysis of it, which I'll highlight in teal. So what I want you to notice is these are 3 stages of this. Before the quote, I give you what to look for in the quote. Then I assume you're going to see how it's reasonable agreement with our opponents. And then you assume I'm going to follow up on this. So what I want to suggest here is a basic pattern that's going to be important for quoting. And it's going to be a statement quote analysis. And this is based on the statement explanation example pattern. And that's also C.
Mhm.
So let's give some basic rules of thumb for quoting. And one rule of thumb for quoting is if the quote is a sentence or longer, you lead into it with a full sentence and a colon. Now the colon isn't the most important part of it, but what I'm suggesting why I'm suggesting you use a colon is because that allows you to say right here, right now, here's a quote that demonstrates what you're going to talk about. Okay. Now, if the quote is shorter than a sentence, blend it into your own sentence. And the rule of thumb there is if it doesn't fit without quotation marks, it doesn't fit with them. So this is simply something about the length of the quote. Okay, and the length of the quote is you want to remember that the longer the quote is, the more likely the reader isn't clear what you're doing with it. So if you have a quote that's a sentence or longer, you want to do what we sometimes call a quote sandwich. Okay, so this is also called a quote sentence. And so the analysis, quote, analysis. If we call it a quote sandwich, that's a great helpful way to think about it. Analysis, quote, analysis. Okay. The difference is in the analogy of sandwich, the analysis is bread, but the analysis is also meat in reality. Okay. Now, any questions about these patterns here? Okay. So let's take a look at how that does. So here we have the quote sandwich. Here we have this statement quote analysis. Evans distances herself from the more emotional aspects of this issue by stating her argument in negatives founded in reasonable agreement with her opponents. So what you're looking for in this quote is reasonably agree with her opponents. Then I quote it. That is not to say that I reject the notion of deterrence as a justification generally. Now I say she's stating her argument in negatives. Now when I say negatives, I don't mean bad. What I mean is saying a negative in analytical discourse, a negative is talking about what things are not. A positive is talking about what things are. Okay. So negatives, that is not to say, that's a negative. Okay. She is not going to say something. Rather, I am not persuaded, another negative, that rather I'm not persuaded that a statistically sound correlation has been established. I do not believe, another negative, that the perpetrators of such crimes weight the consequences of their actions in ways even remotely similar to how most of us go through life. So at every step of this, she's talking about what is not in order to get to a place where she can talk about what is. Now, clearly, I have some explaining to do, don't I?
Mhm.
Do you see the negatives? Do you see the reasonable agreement? And I imagine you kind of do, but you don't totally. But if a reader kind of sees but doesn't totally see, that's a good position for me because it allows me to come in and explain. Deterrence is not the reason to have executions. Okay, I'm explaining what I mean by this negative reasonable agreement. Research suggests that people who commit extreme murders, and a lot of time extreme murder as opposed to very reasonable murder, right? Okay, extreme murders rarely act with a direct connection in mind between consulting and committing these horrors and being punished for them. That is connecting to her sense. I do not believe the perpetrators of such crimes weight the consequences of their actions. Everything I'm saying is drawn in some way by a response to the quote I've just given. Okay, so I want you to notice. Okay, first of all, I'm using the colon here. I'm using the colon here to give myself something to talk about. Okay, the colon right there. Okay. Okay. Second, I want you to notice that afterwards I'm following up on what I've said here with this stage. Okay. And the third thing I want you to notice is I don't have to say this quote suggests. You assume that I'm going to follow up with a quote. Okay. Because essentially what happens with this statement quote analysis pattern, okay, is that statement quote analysis is statement explanation example, because it really becomes statement. Okay, let's see here. The quote sandwich is really statement example explanation. So what I want you to think about is that no matter what complex things we're doing, they're in some level based upon the simple thing we talked about at the beginning of the semester, which is statement explanation example. No matter which writing you're doing, no matter how long the essay is, no matter what your purpose for it is, you're still using statement explanation example. It applies even in quoting. Okay, so you're never entirely away from what the primary purpose is, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, some points here. Now, I do want to put out a video on this in more detail, but right here, I just want to make the point that a lot of you in your essays are saying somebody states, or says. Those are weak verbs. I want you to move toward argues or contends. Now, at the bottom of this module, I have an argumentative lead-in handout. I'm planning on filming a video that goes over that. Okay, but for right now, you want to recognize that if you say somebody says, you're weakening the point. If you say he argues, you're emphasizing the logic of the point. If you say contends, you're talking about the logic of it. Okay, you want to move away from it. It's not wrong to say says, it's just weak. Now, the last thing I want to talk about on this one here, the internal documentation. Now, you have two different things, two different sources that are going to be documented differently. So for Winwrite, okay, which is the first one we're doing here, this is the documentation form I want you to use. And again, I had a video that I went over this in more detail. Okay, but we have a page number. The whole article's on page 11. So you put 11, comma, and column 1, because when you look at the essay, you notice, okay, and I should have brought this up here, okay, that it is one page, but it's divided into columns. Okay. And because it's divided into columns, I can give you the page, but I can also send you to a more precise place on it by the column. Okay. Now I need the page number, even though there's just one page here, I need the page number, but I want you to give the column on this. So let's start with the assumption that if there's a quote, there's documentation behind it. If there's a quote, the reader's going to wonder where it came from and going to want to see that, right? Okay. So I want to see you guys, okay, I want to see you guys become, over the semester, just a tiny bit, hopefully paranoid and anal retentive. So in this class, I want you to assume that throughout your college career, everybody thinks you're a liar. Okay, that everybody thinks you're trying to get away with something. Everybody thinks you're trying to do something that's really should be on the DL. So what I want you to do is assume that they're not going to trust you, so that you can show you should be trusted. And the way you show you should be trusted is by documenting everything. So the instant that there is a quote, or the instant you take information from a source, right at the end of that sentence where you do it, you have parentheses. Now for Winwrite, the documentation is going to be page 11, comma, and the column. Okay, for Health Guide, it's a little trickier because if we take a look at this one here, you notice that she doesn't have page numbers. It's an online source. Good. Okay. Let me see if I can get through this. Okay. It's an online source and there are no page numbers. Now, for an online source that's not a PDF, that doesn't have listed page numbers, you don't list it by the page number of your printout because the reader may have different, printer will print out different pages. So this one is about 9 paragraphs. So what I do is I document this by the paragraph. Okay, so let's say, so let me give you a sample here. Okay, so let's say I'm going to quote this. Got that. Now I've got this quote from Health Guide. Now I'm not going to worry about changing the color of the print right now because we want to do this. So we have this quote. We've got this, and what I want to do is I want to make a point about it. I'm having a fight with my mouse. It's trying to slide off my desk. Okay. So what I might do is I might lead into this with something to look for. Now, just okay, as a small note here, where is it? I'm looking for my cursor. Okay, now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to convert this to Times Roman and 12-point font. Okay. So I've said there's an inherent class inequity. I've got this quote. Now, what am I going to do to show where it came from? Well, I'm going to put my parentheses right here. I'm going to go back to this and take a look and see what paragraph is that in. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so my documentation is going to list that paragraph. So what you want to do is in your internal documentation is you want to, as much as possible, match it to what's in there. Now, since there are no specific page and it's a fairly short essay, I can number it by the paragraph without much trouble. Any questions about that? Okay. Okay, so I think I've gone over everything that really needs to do on it. Now, everything else you have here, okay, I have more precise videos. Now, again, I have a video that goes over these bullet points in more detail. I wanted to use the Winwrite notes as a kind of starting place. And so if you forget this, you can take a look at this video. You can take a look at the other video that does that handout in more detail. I've also got a video on the argumentation link that goes over the argumentation essay in much more detail than we have here. Okay, so you can look at those. And the problem with that is that means you need to look at my face, and you will want me to turn off my camera. I understand that. I get that. Okay. 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 Any questions about anything we've talked about so far?
No.
Okay.
No. So
let's call it a day. Go back, be on the lookout for another video to drop. Okay, James, you're set on your topic. Melissa, you just need to refine that a little bit more, but I think those can work. Okay, and I'm going to go see about talk to our Zoom meisters about what's going on about the access. Now, James, you said you have to put in a code to get
A
it.
code, yeah, you put in a code and then it doesn't let you watch it.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Because and I suppose I can watch it because I don't need the code.
I don't know.
Okay, so let me work on that and see what's going on that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, see you guys next week. Now, remember, next week I want to do it on Tuesday at 4.
Okay.
Okay, other people have talked about that, talked about getting time for that, and I'll do that then. Okay, I will see you guys. Okay,
All right. Bye.
bye.